My name is Natalie Carter, and I used to think I knew everything about my mom, Jennifer. She was the kind of mother who made homemade pancakes every Sunday, remembered the names of all my classmates, and never let me leave the house without a hug. I thought she lived a quiet, predictable life. That was, until the day she invited me into her secret world, and I saw too much, more than I was ever prepared to understand. It started one warm Saturday afternoon when I came home early from college for spring break. I hadn't told her I was coming early, hoping to surprise her. The house was unusually silent. No sizzling pans in the kitchen, no TV murmuring in the background, and no rustling of her usual gardening gloves outside. I quietly stepped inside and headed toward the stairs, only to stop at the sound of her voice echoing faintly from the basement. That was strange. She almost never went down there. Curious, I walked down slowly, careful not to make any noise. The basement door was cracked open, and a soft glow poured through. As I peeked inside, I saw something that made me freeze. My mother, my sweet, wholesome mom, stood in front of a vanity mirror in an elaborate costume. She wore a red wig, dramatic makeup, and a sequin dress that hugged her body like a second skin. She looked like someone else entirely. Someone I didn't know. Her posture was poised, confident, like she had stepped out of a movie set. Before I could react, she turned around and saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled gently, almost knowingly, and said, "Well, I guess it's time you knew." We sat in the basement for nearly an hour, me on a beanbag chair, her still in costume. She told me everything. Her name wasn't always Jennifer Carter. She used to perform under the stage name Vivian Rose. Before I was born, she was a well-known cabaret performer in a hidden subculture of the city. After marrying my dad, she gave it all up, or so she thought. But after his death 10 years ago, she found herself lonely and lost. One night, she dug out her old heels, red lipstick, and went back to that world. Not on big stages but in secret underground gatherings and private clubs where women like her performed stories through music and dance. It was never about the money or attention, she said. It was about finding herself again. I was stunned. She never told me anything about this side of her. Not even a hint. It was like discovering she had lived a whole other life in parallel with ours. I didn't know what to say, so I just asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "Because I didn't think you'd understand. I wanted to keep my lives separate. But I'm tired of hiding." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the image of her transformation, how graceful and sure she looked, so different from the mother who wore fleece pajamas and baked cinnamon rolls. I wondered what else she had kept from me. Part of me felt betrayed. But another part felt fascinated. I decided to stay home longer than I had planned. I wanted to know more. About her. About the life she used to live, and still did in secret. The next day, she asked if I wanted to come with her to one of her performances. She said it wasn't like a club or anything inappropriate. It was more like a gathering of women who had built a community through expression. After some hesitation, I agreed. We drove to a warehouse space on the edge of town. From the outside, it looked abandoned, but inside, it was alive with color, music, and laughter. Women of all ages and backgrounds greeted my mom like she was royalty. "Vivian's daughter," they said with admiration, as if I had inherited some legacy I knew nothing about. As I watched her perform on stage under soft lights, narrating a story of grief and rediscovery through a dance piece, something inside me shifted. She was powerful, vulnerable, beautiful, and completely in control. When the audience stood in applause, I found myself clapping too, tears welling up in my eyes. Later that night, we walked back to the car in silence. She looked over at me and asked, "What did you think?" I answered honestly, "I don't know how you hid this from me for so long. But I'm glad you showed me." After that night, things changed between us. We shared stories over late-night tea. She taught me some of her performance routines just for fun. And over time, I learned more than just dance steps. I learned about resilience, about how complex and layered a person can be, even someone as close as your own mother. But then something happened that made me question everything again. A few weeks later, I got a message from someone named Rebecca, claiming to be my mother's old friend from the Cabaret days. She said she needed to meet me. Curious and a little cautious, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Rebecca was tall, graceful, and had the kind of confidence that made everyone notice when she walked into a room. She told me stories about my mom's past, how she used to be the headliner in a controversial show that pushed boundaries. She hinted that there were sides to my mom I still didn't know. Things that went beyond performing. When I asked what she meant, she simply said, "Ask her about Paris." That night I did. At first, my mom grew quiet. She stirred her tea, eyes distant. Then she said, "I didn't want you to ever know about that chapter." I waited silent, hoping she'd continue. Finally, she spoke. She had traveled to Paris in her 20s, right before meeting my dad. She got involved with an underground art circle, painters, writers, dancers, even political radicals. It was intoxicating. One man, in particular, captivated her. His name was Marco. He was a sculptor with dangerous ideas and an intense charm. Their affair lasted 3 months. When she found out he was married and involved in criminal activity, smuggling art and laundering money, she left him and fled home. But before she left, she'd been involved in helping him transport something, believing it was legal. When it turned out it wasn't, she was terrified the authorities would catch her. But somehow, nothing ever came of it. I was shocked. That was not the kind of story you expect from your mother. She looked at me and said, "That was the moment I realized how easy it is to fall into something you don't fully understand, even with good intentions." Suddenly, her secret life didn't feel like a thrilling performance anymore. It felt dangerous, complex, heavy. I didn't know what to do with the information. Part of me admired her honesty, but another part worried about what else I didn't know. Could I trust someone who had lived so many versions of herself? Things were tense between us for a few days. I kept my distance, needing space to think. Then one evening, I came home and found her crying on the couch. She held a letter in her hand. It was from Rebecca. She had written to say goodbye. She had cancer. Terminal. And she wanted my mom to perform one last time, with her. Despite everything, my mother agreed. The final performance was different from any I had seen. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was raw, emotional, honest. They told their story through a series of monologues and subtle movements. It was about friendship, mistakes, forgiveness, and second chances. Watching them on stage, I finally understood. My mother hadn't hidden her secret life to deceive me. She had done it because she wanted to protect the person I thought she was, the person she was still trying to be.